The old film studio sat at the edge of Seoul like a forgotten giant. Its walls were gray and dirty, and bits of paper flew around in the wind. Do-won Kim stood at the entrance, keys jingling in his hand. He had been working as a prop master for 15 years. But this was the first time he had to clean out such an old studio. "Are you sure about this place?" Jae-ah Park asked, pulling her jacket closer. She was Do-won's assistant, fresh out of film school and still learning the ropes. "It looks like no one has been here for ages." "That's exactly why we're here," Do-won said with a smile. "The best props are always in places people forget about." He pushed open the heavy metal door, which made a loud creaking sound. Their flashlights cut through the darkness inside. Dust danced in the beams of light. The air smelled old and musty, like wet cardboard and rusty metal. Props from old movies lay everywhere: broken chairs, torn paintings, and odd pieces of furniture covered in white sheets. "The director wants authentic props for the new horror movie," Do-won explained as they walked deeper into the building. "Things with history. Things that look like they have stories to tell." Jae-ah nodded, but she kept close to Do-won. Their footsteps echoed in the empty space. She helped him check different rooms, taking pictures of interesting items they found. They found old cameras, vintage radios, and even a beautiful old desk that Do-won marked for later pickup. In the last room, something caught Do-won's eye. In the corner, half hidden behind a fallen shelf, sat a wooden box. It was different from everything else they had seen. While other props were covered in dust, this box looked clean, as if someone had just placed it there. "Jae-ah, bring your light over here," he called out. When she came closer, he carefully picked up the box. It was made of dark wood and had beautiful carvings all over it. The carvings showed strange symbols and patterns that Do-won had never seen before. "What do you think these mean?" he asked, running his fingers over the symbols. "Maybe we shouldn't touch it," Jae-ah said quietly. "Something feels wrong about it." Do-won understood what she meant. The box felt strangely warm, even though the room was cold. When he shook it gently, something inside moved. With careful hands, he opened the lid. Inside, lying on red fabric that looked brand new, was a puppet. It was about the size of a small child, made of wood like the box. Its face was painted white with red lines around its eyes and mouth. The puppet wore old-style Korean clothes, the kind people wore hundreds of years ago. "This is perfect," Do-won whispered. "Look at the craftsmanship. This must be from the Joseon dynasty. The director will love this." But Jae-ah stepped back. "Do-won, please look at its eyes." Do-won looked closer. The puppet's eyes were made of black glass, shiny and deep. For a moment, just a brief moment, he thought he saw something move in those eyes, like a flash of blue light. But when he blinked, it was gone. "It's just old glass catching the light," he said, but his voice shook a little. "Help me wrap it up. We're taking this one back first." As they carefully packed the puppet back in its box, neither of them noticed how the temperature in the room had dropped. They didn't see how the shadows in the corners seemed to move on their own. And they definitely didn't notice the small smile that appeared on the puppet's painted face for just a second before disappearing again. Do-won wrote down the location of the other props they had found and locked up the studio. As they drove back to their current film set, the wooden box sat in the backseat of their car. Every now and then, when they hit a bump in the road, they heard something move inside the box. Each time, Jae-ah looked back nervously, but Do-won kept his eyes on the road ahead, trying to ignore the strange feeling that they weren't just carrying an old prop. They were carrying something that had been waiting to be found for a very long time. 3 days after finding the puppet, things started to go wrong on the movie set. Director Sung-ho Lee stood behind the cameras, watching the scene for the 10th time. Hae-eun Choi, their lead actress, was supposed to walk into the room, see the puppet sitting in the old rocking chair, and look scared. But every time they tried to film it, something went wrong with the cameras. "Let's try again," Sung-ho said, rubbing his tired eyes. Camera 3 isn't working now. The camera operator checked his equipment. That's impossible. I just fixed it 10 minutes ago. HFY sat in a chair nearby, drinking water. She had been acting in horror movies for 5 years, but something felt different about this one. Every time she got close to the puppet, the air around her got cold. Not movie set cold from air conditioning, but a deep cold that went right through her clothes. Ready for another take? Do-One asked, walking over to adjust the puppet in the rocking chair. When he touched it, he pulled his hand back quickly. The puppet was warm, even though it had been sitting in the cold room all day. Actually, HFY said, standing up, "Can we take a break? I need to tell you something, Director Lee." Sung-Ho nodded, and they walked to a quiet corner of the set. HFY played with her water bottle, trying to find the right words. I think the puppet moved yesterday." "Moved?" Sung-Ho asked. "You mean someone bumped the chair?" "No," HFY said quietly. "During the scene where I'm supposed to be sleeping, I had my eyes slightly open. I saw it turn its head to look at me. Just a little bit, but I'm sure it moved." Before Sung-Ho could answer, they heard a crash from the set. They ran back to find one of the big lights had fallen, just missing Do-One, who had been adjusting some props. "Is everyone okay?" Sung-Ho called out. "Fine," Do-One answered, but his face was white. "But look at this." He pointed to the puppet. It was facing a different direction now, looking right at where Do-One had been standing when the light fell. Jaya walked over with her laptop. "You need to see something," she said, her voice shaking a little. She opened a video file. "This is from yesterday's filming." The video showed HFY doing her scene. The puppet sat in the background. As they watched, strange blue lines appeared across the screen like lightning. When the lines cleared, the puppet's position had changed slightly. "Maybe it's just the camera glitching," Sung-Ho said. But he didn't sound sure. Suddenly, all the lights in the studio went out. Someone screamed. When the emergency lights came on a few seconds later, everyone stared at the rocking chair. The puppet was gone. "There," one of the crew members shouted, pointing. The puppet now sat on top of one of the big camera cases, its painted face seeming to smile in the dim light. "Nobody panic," Sung-Ho said, though his own hands were shaking. "There must be a logical explanation." HFY stepped closer to the puppet, even though every part of her wanted to run away. "The symbols on its clothes," she said. "They're glowing." She was right. Faint blue lines, just like the ones they had seen in the video, were moving across the puppet's wooden surface. The same strange marks that Do-One had seen carved on the box were now shining with their own light. "Do-One," Sung-Ho said quietly, "where exactly did you find this thing?" Before Do-One could answer, all their phones started ringing at the same time. The screens showed the same message, strange symbols, just like the ones on the puppet, scrolling across their screens. In the silence that followed, they heard something that made their blood run cold, the sound of wood creaking, like someone slowly moving their joints after being still for a very long time. The puppet was standing up. After the puppet stood up, everyone ran out of the studio. They gathered in the parking lot, shaking and confused. But Tae-Young Kang, the young production assistant, didn't run. Instead, he took pictures of the glowing symbols with his phone. The next morning, Tae-Young sat in the Seoul National Library, surrounded by old books. He hadn't slept all night. The symbols on the puppet looked familiar to him, like something he had seen in his history books at university. "Found anything?" Do-One asked, putting a cup of coffee on the table. He looked tired too. No one had gone back into the studio after what happened. "Yes," Tae-Young said, opening a very old book carefully. "Look at this. These are drawings from the Joseon dynasty, about 200 years ago. They show the same symbols we saw on the puppet." The book showed drawings of strange lights in the sky and mysterious marks on the ground. There were also pictures of people running away from something, but the artist hadn't drawn what they were running from. "There's more," Tae-Young said, pulling out his laptop. I found old newspaper stories about people disappearing near a small theater in Seoul. This was in 1892. Witnesses said they saw blue lights and strange symbols before each person vanished. Do-won picked up one of the old newspapers. What happened to the theater? It burned down, Tae-young said. But here's the interesting part. They found one thing in the ashes that didn't burn. A wooden puppet in a box. Jaya, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. Are you saying our puppet is the same one? I think so, Tae-young said. And there's something else. The theater belonged to a man named Young-ho Park. He was a famous puppet master who claimed his best puppet wasn't just a puppet. He said it came from the stars. Ha-yeon walked over to their table, carrying more old books. She had come to help with the research after hearing about Tae-young's discovery. People thought Young-ho was crazy. She read from one of the books. But strange things kept happening during his shows. Lights floating in the air. Music that came from nowhere. People said his puppet could move on its own. Just like ours, Do-won whispered. Tae-young opened another book. This one had a picture of Young-ho Park. He was holding a puppet that looked exactly like the one they had found in the old studio. Young-ho wrote something before he disappeared, Tae-young said. He said the puppet was trying to tell him something important. He said it showed him visions of other worlds and strange machines, but he couldn't understand what it wanted. What happened to him? Jaya asked. No one knows. One day, he and the puppet just vanished. The police found his house empty. The only strange thing was that all his mirrors were covered with papers that had those same symbols written on them. Do-won's phone buzzed. It was a message from the security guard at the studio. The cameras had caught something strange last night. The guard had attached a video. They all gathered around Do-won's phone to watch. The video showed the puppet, still sitting where they had left it. But at exactly midnight, it raised its head and looked directly at the camera. Blue light came from its eyes, and symbols appeared in the air around it. Those are the same symbols from the books, Tae-young said excitedly. But look, they're moving, changing. It's like they're trying to form words. Can you decode them? Hae-yeon asked. Maybe, Tae-young said. Young-ho Park left notebooks full of similar symbols. If I can find them in the library archives, I might be able to figure out what the puppet is trying to say. As they talked, none of them noticed that their phones were glowing faintly. On each screen, tiny blue symbols were appearing and disappearing, like someone was sending them a message they couldn't yet understand. That night, Do-won couldn't sleep. The symbols from the puppet kept appearing in his mind. At 11:30 p.m., he got in his car and drove to the studio. He knew it wasn't smart to go alone, but something was pulling him there, like a magnet pulling a piece of metal. The studio was dark and quiet. Do-won's footsteps echoed as he walked through the empty hallways. His flashlight beam bounced off the walls, making strange shadows dance around him. The puppet was still there, sitting where they had left it after running away. I know you're more than just a puppet, Do-won said out loud. His voice sounded small in the big empty space. I know you're trying to tell us something. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, blue light began to leak from the puppet's eyes. It wasn't scary like before. This time, it was soft and gentle, like moonlight on water. The puppet's head turned to look at him. Its wooden joints made quiet creaking sounds. Do-won's heart was beating fast, but he didn't run. Instead, he sat down on the floor in front of it. Can you understand me? He asked. The puppet nodded. Its movements were smooth now, not jerky like before. Blue symbols appeared in the air between them, floating like tiny stars. I can't read your symbols, Do-won said. Can you find another way to talk to me? The puppet raised its wooden hand. The blue light grew stronger, filling the room with a soft glow. Suddenly, Do-won heard a voice in his head. It wasn't like a human voice. It was like music and whispers mixed together. Hello, Do-won Kim, the voice said. I have been waiting a very long time for someone to find me. Do-One's mouth felt dry. What are you? I am a messenger, the voice said. My people sent me to Earth many years ago. We were supposed to learn about humans, to understand if you were ready to know about us. You're an alien. Yes. My real form is energy. This puppet is just a shell, a way to exist in your world. We left many objects like this on Earth, watching and learning. But something strange happened. Human emotions began to affect our technology. Your feelings, your beliefs, your fears, they changed our objects, made them seem cursed. Do-One thought about all the stories of haunted dolls and cursed objects he had heard. So none of them were really cursed. They were all like you. Some were. Others became something different when human emotions changed them. We didn't expect that. Humans are more powerful than we knew. But why show yourself now? Do-One asked. The puppet stood up and walked closer. Its movements were graceful now, like a dancer. Because humans are ready. Your stories, your movies, your dreams of space, they show us you're ready to know the truth. I chose your studio because you make stories. You help people imagine new things. Blue light danced around the room, making beautiful patterns on the walls. Do-One saw images in the light, strange cities, amazing machines, creatures he could barely understand. Will you help me? The puppet asked. Help me show others the truth. Not everyone at once. Slowly, carefully, through your stories. Do-One thought about his friends waiting to hear from him. About Tai-Young studying the old books. About Hei-Yun who saw the puppet move first. About Jia who felt something special about it from the beginning. I'll help, he said. But I'm not alone. My friends, they're part of this too now. Yes, the puppet said. Its painted face seemed to smile. That's why I chose all of you. Humans are strongest when they work together. Just then, Do-One's phone buzzed. It was a message from Jia. Where are you? We're all at the library. Tai-Young found something important. Go, the puppet said. Tell them what you learned. Tomorrow, we can begin to share our stories. As Do-One walked out of the studio, the blue light followed him like a friendly ghost. For the first time since finding the puppet, he wasn't scared anymore. He was excited. Do-One found his friends sitting at a back table in the library. Books and papers were spread everywhere. Tai-Young was showing something on his laptop to Jia and Hei-Yun. I talked to it, Do-One said, sitting down. Everyone turned to look at him. The puppet. It's an alien. We know, Tai-Young said quietly. Look what I found. He turned his laptop around. On the screen was a very old drawing from a book. It showed the same puppet, but the picture was from 300 years ago. Around the puppet were the same blue symbols they had seen. That's not all, Hei-Yun said. She pushed forward some papers. These are reports from all over Korea. Strange dolls, moving statues, objects that seemed to have power. They all had the same symbols. Jia was typing fast on her phone. And it's not just Korea. I found similar stories from China, Japan, Europe, everywhere. Always with the same blue lights and strange symbols. Just then, all their phones lit up with a soft blue glow. Words appeared on their screens, but not in Korean or English. The symbols shifted and changed until they could read them. Now you know the truth, the message said. We have been here all along, watching, learning, waiting. Why did you wait so long to talk to us? Hei-Yun asked out loud. Their phones glowed again. Human emotions are very strong. When we left our devices on Earth, we didn't know they would absorb your feelings. Your fear turned some into what you call cursed objects. Your love made others into lucky charms. Your beliefs gave them power we didn't expect. Like the Annabelle doll, Tai-Young said excitedly, and other famous cursed objects. Were they all alien devices? Some were, the answer came. Others were changed by human emotions alone. Your feelings are so strong, they can change the world around you. That's what makes humans special. Do-One remembered what the puppet had shown him at the studio. "Can you show them what you showed me?" he asked. The blue light grew stronger. Suddenly, the air around them filled with beautiful floating images. They saw strange cities made of crystal and light. They saw ships that sailed between stars. They saw creatures of pure energy dancing in space. "This is your world," HFY whispered. "One of many," the message appeared. "We travel between stars, learning, growing, sharing knowledge. We want to share with humans too, but slowly. Your emotions are strong. Too much knowledge too fast could be dangerous." "Is that why you chose us?" HumanityFYeah asked. "Because we make movies." "Yes. Stories are the best way to share truth. They prepare minds for new ideas. When people watch your movies, they open their hearts to new possibilities." Tae-young looked at all his research spread out on the table. All these years, people thought these objects were cursed. They were afraid. But really, they were just trying to talk to us. "Fear comes from not understanding," the message said. "Help others understand. Not everything strange is scary. Not everything powerful is dangerous. Sometimes, the things people fear most are just waiting to be understood." Do-One looked at his friends. "So what do we do now?" "We finish our movie," HumanityFYeah said firmly. "But we tell a different story. A true story. Won't people be scared if they know the truth?" HFY asked. Their phones glowed one last time. "Truth doesn't have to be scary. Show them the beauty first. The wonder. Help them see what we see when we look at humans. Beings of great power and greater potential. Beings ready to join a larger universe." The blue light faded slowly, leaving them sitting in the quiet library. But now the quiet felt different. It wasn't scary anymore. It felt like the quiet before something wonderful begins. "Well," Do-One said, smiling at his friends, "I guess we have a new movie to make." The next few days were unlike anything the film crew had ever experienced. They moved their equipment to a smaller private studio where they could work without anyone watching. The puppet, which they now knew was much more than a puppet, came with them, ready to try something new. Do-One asked the puppet one morning. The whole team was there, excited to see what would happen. Blue light filled the room as the puppet stood up. "Yes," the familiar musical voice said in their minds. "Today, I will show you how we tell stories." Suddenly, the air around them changed. The blue light formed shapes and pictures, like the world's most amazing movie screen. They saw strange worlds with 3 suns, oceans that floated in the sky, and creatures made of light and shadow. "This is beautiful," HumanityFYeah said, reaching out to touch the light. Where her hand passed through it, the colors danced and changed. "Is this how your people share stories?" "Yes," the puppet answered. "We share memories and dreams through light and energy. But we find your way of telling stories fascinating too." "Our way?" Tae-young asked, still taking pictures of everything with his phone. "You use simple things, words, pictures, music, but you make people feel so much. You make them care about people who don't exist. You make them cry for made-up stories. You make them hope for impossible things. This is a power we don't fully understand." HFY was recording everything on her camera. "Can you explain more about your world?" she asked. "About your people." The puppet moved to the center of the room. The blue light grew stronger, and new images appeared. They saw cities that looked like they were made of singing crystal. They saw ships that could fold space like paper. They saw beings of pure energy dancing between stars. "We are explorers and learners," the puppet explained. "We travel through space and time, collecting knowledge and stories. Earth interested us because humans are different from any beings we've met. You feel things so strongly that your emotions can change the physical world around you." "Is that dangerous?" Do-One asked. "It can be. That's why we watch and wait. We want to share our knowledge with humans, but we must be careful. Too much too fast could be harmful. like giving a very powerful tool to someone who isn't ready to use it safely. Director Sung-ho, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. That's what stories are for, aren't you? Stories help people get ready for new ideas. They help people practice feeling things safely. Yes, the puppet's blue light pulsed brighter. That's exactly right. Through stories, humans can experience new things slowly, safely. They can learn to handle big ideas without being overwhelmed. HFY sat down next to the puppet. Then teach us your stories, she said, and we'll help tell them to others in a way they can understand. The puppet turned to her. Would you like to see how we remember our history? It's very different from your books and movies. Everyone nodded eagerly. The puppet raised its wooden hands, and the blue light formed a sphere around them. Suddenly, they weren't in the studio anymore. They were floating in space, watching the history of an alien civilization unfold around them like a dream. This is amazing, Jaya whispered. We could never film anything like this. But we can try, Do-won said, his mind already thinking of ways to capture this feeling in their movie. We can find a way to show people what we're seeing, even if it's not exactly the same. The puppet's voice was warm in their minds. Now you understand. This is not just about sharing our stories or your stories. Together, we can create something new, something that belongs to both our worlds. As they floated in the sphere of light, watching impossible things become possible, they all knew their movie was going to be more than just a movie. It was going to be the first chapter in a much bigger story. Word about strange happenings at the film studio began to spread. Even though the team tried to keep their work secret, people noticed things were different. Blue lights in the windows at night, strange sounds that seemed to come from nowhere, film equipment that worked better than it should. One morning, Do-won arrived at the studio to find two men in black suits waiting outside. They looked serious and official. Mr. Kim, one of them said, showing a government ID. We need to talk about some unusual events at your studio. Do-won's heart beat faster, but he stayed calm. Of course, he said. Please come to my office. Inside, the men asked many questions. Had they found any strange objects? Had they seen any unusual lights? Had any of their equipment picked up signals they couldn't explain? We're just making a movie, Do-won said carefully. Sometimes we use special effects. The second man leaned forward. Mr. Kim, we know about the puppet. We know it's more than just a prop. The government is very interested in studying it. Just then, Do-won's phone buzzed. A message appeared in blue light. Don't be afraid. I can hide if I need to. But think carefully about what happens next. HFY and Jaya arrived at the studio while the men were still there. They saw what was happening and quickly called Tae-young and director Sung-ho. Soon, the whole team was gathered in Do-won's office. The government can protect this artifact, the first man said. We have special facilities, scientists who can study it. This could be very important for national security. And what about the movie? Director Sung-ho asked. The project would need to be shut down, the second man said. Everything about the puppet would be classified. Top secret. The team looked at each other. They had learned so much in the past weeks. They had seen wonderful things. They had learned that the universe was bigger and more amazing than they had ever imagined. Can we have some time to think about it? Do-won asked. The men stood up. You have until tomorrow morning, they said. We'll return for your answer then. After they left, the puppet's voice spoke in all their minds. Now you face a choice, it said. One that many worlds face when they first learn they're not alone. What choice is that? HFY asked. Between fear and hope. Between hiding the truth or finding a way to share it safely. Tae-young was looking through his research notes. Throughout history, he said, whenever humans found something they didn't understand, they either tried to control it or destroy it. But we're not trying to control or destroy anything, Jaya said. We're trying to understand, to learn, to share stories. Director Sung-ho walked to the window. If we give the puppet to the government, they'll lock it away. Study it like a thing, not a being. Everything we've learned, everything we've seen, it will all become a secret. But if we don't, Do One said, we could get in serious trouble. The puppet's blue light filled the room gently. There is another way, it said, one that has worked on other worlds. Sometimes the best way to share a big truth is to hide it in plain sight. What do you mean? HFY asked. What do humans do when they see something amazing in a movie? Something that seems impossible. Jaya's eyes lit up. They assume it's special effects. Movie magic. Even if they feel something real, something true, they think it's just a really good story, Taeyong added. Do One smiled as he understood. So we finish our movie. We show everything we've seen, everything we've learned. People will think it's all just really good filmmaking. And the real truth will be there, Director Sungho said, for anyone ready to see it. The puppet's light twinkled like stars. Now you understand. The choice isn't between hiding and showing. It's about finding the right way to share the truth. They all looked at each other, and one by one, they nodded. They knew what they had to do. The next morning, when the government men returned to the studio, they found something unexpected. The whole film crew was there, cameras rolling, lights blazing. HFY was in the middle of the scene, acting with the puppet. What's going on here? The first man demanded. Director Sungho stepped forward with a big smile. We're filming our movie. Would you like to see what we've done so far? Before the men could answer, HFY began her scene. The puppet moved, surrounded by beautiful blue light. But now there were visible wires, carefully placed lights, and special effects machines working all around it. Impressive effects, the second man said, looking confused. But we know the puppet is real. Real. Director Sungho laughed. It's our best prop. Do One here is amazing with mechanical puppets, and wait until you see what our special effects team can do. Do One brought out a box full of mechanical parts and small lights. Want to see how it works? He asked, showing them fake wires and battery packs. The puppet, understanding the plan, moved exactly like a normal mechanical prop would. The blue light now clearly came from hidden LED strips that Jaya had set up. But the signals we detected, the first man said. Taeyong jumped in, holding his laptop. Oh, those were probably from our new digital effects system. It uses special frequencies to control all our equipment. Very high-tech stuff. The government men walked around the set, looking at everything. They saw normal movie equipment. They saw ordinary special effects. They saw a simple puppet on strings. Everything had a logical, simple explanation. After an hour, they left. They still looked suspicious, but they had no reason to shut down the movie. It was just another film production using clever tricks to tell a story. After they were gone, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. That was close, HFY said. The puppet's voice spoke in their minds, sounding amused. You humans are very clever. You understand something important that many other beings don't. What's that? Jaya asked. Sometimes the best place to hide truth is in art. When people think they're seeing a story, they open their minds and hearts. They let themselves believe, even if just for a little while. Over the next few months, they finished their movie. It was the story of a cursed puppet that turned out to be something wonderful instead of something scary. They showed all the amazing things they had seen. The alien worlds, the ships that sailed between stars, the beings made of light. But they showed them as special effects and movie magic. The puppet helped them, using its real abilities to create scenes that looked like incredible filmmaking. When people asked how they did it, the team just smiled and talked about movie secrets and new technology. The movie came out in theaters 6 months later. People loved it. They talked about the amazing effects, the beautiful story, and how it made them feel about the universe and their place in it. Look at these reviews, Taeyong said one day, showing everyone his phone. People wrote things like, "It felt so real," and I almost believed it could be true, and it made me look at the world differently. The puppet's voice was warm in their minds. They understand, even if they don't know they understand. Each person who sees your movie carries a small piece of the truth in their heart. When will they be ready for the whole truth? Do one asked. They're getting ready now, one story at a time. And look, you're already planning your next movie, aren't you? Director Sung-ho smiled. He was indeed working on a new script, this time about strange lights in the sea and the wonderful things that might live in the deep water. The puppet watched them all with its wooden face and its eyes full of stars. In the end, it had completed its mission better than its makers had ever planned. It had helped humans understand they weren't alone in the universe. But more importantly, it had helped them understand how to share that knowledge, not with fear, but with wonder and hope in stories that felt like magic. And that was just the beginning.